Hi, today I'm going to show you how to bleed your SRAM hydraulic disc brake system. Today we're going to be bleeding code brakes, but the same is true for guide, G2 and level brake systems with a bleeding edge attachment. These are the tools we'll be using to complete the brake bleed. A T25 Torx for leveling out the lever, a T10 Torx for removing the bleed nipple, needle nose pliers in order to remove the retaining pin, a 6mm Allen key. This is for removing the rear axle on this particular bike, but it could differ depending on your model of bike and wheel. A 4mm Allen key for loosening the bleed port on the caliper. A 2.5mm Allen key for removing the pad retaining pin. We'll be using plastic tyre levers to push back the pistons before removing the pads. In this kit, you get all the parts you need to actually complete the hydraulic part of the bleed. You'll get 2 syringes, and you'll also need from the kit the 2 separate adapters. One for the lever and one for the caliper. You will also need from the kit a pad spacer for after you remove the pads. SRAM brakes use DOT fluid. Today we'll be using DOT 5.1, but it's also compatible with DOT 4. The important thing to remember about DOT fluid is that it's highly corrosive. With that in mind, we'll be wearing nitrile gloves because DOT fluid can really irritate the skin. Also keep on hand plenty of rags, or in this case, workshop paper, to clean up any spills. And we'll also be using disc brake cleaner because it evaporates quickly and leaves no residue. The next step is to remove the C-clip, retaining pin and pads. And for this, we begin by using needle nose pliers to remove the C-clip. The next step is to reset the pistons using a plastic tyre lever. Do this by inserting the tyre lever between the brake pads and gently pushing back and forth until the pistons are back inside the caliper. We'll then use a 2.5mm Allen key to remove the retaining pin. And lastly, for this step, push the pads upwards and remove them from the caliper. Next step is to fit the bleed block. We do this by sliding it into the top of the caliper and then refitting the retaining pin. The next step is to level off the lever. This will make it easier when you finally come to bleed the brake. Next step is to prepare our syringes. We'll take the lever syringe and 3/4 fill it with fluid. While doing this, make sure you take it slow to prevent any excess air in the fluid. Then invert and gently press the syringe to remove any of the air bubbles out of the system. Once that's done, clip it in place to seal your syringe. We'll repeat this step with the caliper syringe with a bleeding edge attachment, but for this one, only fill it just under 1/4 full. And now we get on to the bleed. Firstly, we need to prepare the caliper. First part is removing the rubber bung. The next step is to loosen off the bleed screw that's internally, and for this we use the 4mm Allen key. So undo it and then gently turn it back. We can now fit the syringe. Press in until you hear a click. Next step is to prepare the lever side. We'll take a T10 Torx to remove the bleed screw. At this point, don't worry if you get a bit of excess, just wipe it up with tissue. We can then gently screw in the syringe. At this point, it's worthwhile fitting a bit of paper towel or an old rag around the lever to catch any excess. To begin the bleed, we firstly start at the caliper, undo the clip, and then turn the bleeding edge tool 1 full turn. Don't turn it any more than 2 full turns, because that will allow fluid to escape. Next, we take the lever syringe, hold it vertically, undo the clip, holding the top syringe vertical, gently press it down. This will push the fluid through the system, and as you can see at the caliper syringe, bubbles are coming through. Stop pressing just before the air gets into the pipe. We will then press the fluid back from the caliper towards the lever end. Watching out for any bubbles. We will then continue this process back and forth until no bubbles are seen. If your fluid's dirty like this, it's time to change the fluid and flush it through with clean, fresh fluid. Next step is to seal off the caliper end. We do this by turning the bleeding edge tool until it stops, closing the clip, and then pulling it directly out. Then take your 4mm Allen key and lock it off to 1.5 to 1.7 Newton meters. At this point, it's worth giving your caliper a quick clean. With the caliper locked off, we now press and depress the lever, and we can then press the syringe to pressurize the system, and then pull backwards to depressurize it, keeping an eye out for any micro bubbles making their way out. Now that there are no longer any bubbles, we can compress once more and then let it stabilize. And then clip off the hose before removing the syringe from the lever. At this point, it's worth noting that some overspill is normal, and that's why we have the rag. We can then refit the bleed nipple. This will need to be tightened to 1.5 to 1.7 Newton meters. And we can then immediately clean off any overspill. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you'd like to see more how-to videos and content like this, don't forget to drop a like and subscribe to our channel.